पहले राजा का टाइम में उसका मंत्री था, सलाहकार, उसको एडवाइस दिया था ऐसा करो, राजा को पसंद है, उसको बांध के उसको समुद्र में फेंक दिया। चाइना का था बहुत रूल खराब, बहुत खराब था, चोरी किया था हाथ काटता था। वो लोग क्या किया था, गांव में मुर्गी चोरी होने शुरू किया। चोर लोग क्या करता था ना, वो मुर्गी के अंदर नमक समक सब डाल के विंटर टाइम में वो लोग आग जलाता था, उसमें आग तपता था। तो सिपाही सेना लोग आता है, ये लोग तो आग ताप रहा था, मैं वो मुर्गी पकड़ा है वहाँ पर, वो मालूम नहीं था। लास्ट में वो लोग पकड़ के ले गया राजा के पास। तो राजा भी वो चिकन खाए ना, वो लोग को हाँ बहुत स्वाद था उसका ना, टेस्ट था, वो लोग को छोड़ दिया। जाओ, उसको एक आइटम मिल गया उसको, उसका नाम है बेकड चिकन।
You asked me about my grandfather's name, no? Ready? He came down during the British area and all this. So he was dressed up like a Britisher. He used to play a game with the Britishers and all this. So like a ball, he put few guinea gold. In guinea gold, real gold, and give him a chopstick. If you can pick it up, take it, it's yours. 1939, 1940, where they know how to use chopstick. And first of all, they all drunk. But nowadays, if you tell somebody to use the chopstick, they will use the chopstick and take it away. So when you open a restaurant, those days, you don't have that much lump sum of money. So 5-6 guys get together. The more money you invest, the more share you got. So my dad got 75% share. And my dad used to pay income tax in Kamlik's name. The real Chinese people who came down directly from China to Bombay is hardly 4-5 families. These hotel people from Bombay, they need staff. So where you get staff? In Calcutta. And Calcutta salary is very less. So they came down to Bombay to work.
जब हम कलकत्ता से गया था तो मेरा जान पहचान तो कोई नहीं था। हाँ, तो मेरे एक कलकत्ता का आंटी हमको इंट्रोड्यूस किया कि तुम जाओ लॉकडाउन में, तुमको हेल्प करेगा। लॉकडाउन था, वो बम्बई का सबसे पुराना रेस्टोरेंट था। वहाँ पर इतना धंधा नहीं था, बिजनेस नहीं था। तब मेरा वो विशेष लेम वो रोने शुरू किया। मैं तो क्या, आप रो रहा है क्यों, कुछ हमने गलत किया या कुछ किया, तो आप मुझे विश्वास करेगा तो मैं आपके लिए मदद करूँगी। वहाँ मेरा ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा सब शिप का कस्टमर हम पकड़ गया था। आपको सिंगापुर शिप और हांगकांग शिप और थाईवान शिप का मतलब वहाँ पर रुका हुआ था। तो वो लोग 3 कैप्टन आया था मेरा। तो रात को 11 बजे तक दुकान चालू हो गया, बंद हो गया, सब छुट्टी हो गया। मैं अकेला दुकान में बैठ के सब वो बना के मैं बनाने शुरू किया। सवेरे 6 बजे तक मैं काम किया 3 टो बनाने के लिए। अच्छा पैसे दिया वो लोग को। आजू बाजू जो लोकल है वो लोग भी खाने शुरू किया। वहाँ करते गए, करते 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 अब मतलब बहुत वो जैसा चाइना टाउन हो गया, आपको लिंक्स प्रेवलेंस हो गया, नानकिंग हो गया, हांगकांग हो गए। हमको बोलता तो क्यों काम नहीं कर रहा है। नानकिंग का शेफ आया मिस्टर ली, वो भी आ जाए एयरपोर्ट भी हमको देख रहा है, तो कहाँ काम नहीं किया बोलता है।
This city had many other restaurants, small Chinese restaurants. Camling, there was Baba Ling's restaurant. Very Cantonese food was available in those restaurants. By far, Indians had not traveled so much to other countries at that time. The traveling was not so frequent. So they did not know much about the Szechuan food. We thought we have done the right thing by bringing that, and mind it, 70-80 seater restaurant used to do 200-250 covers every night. It was always full. The fine dining audience was existing little bit. The culture of city of Mumbai was so used to the refined food, and they relished it because it was first time in a 5-star hotel some Szechuan fine dining Chinese food came in. It was something different they had not seen in any of the Cantonese restaurants, and it was suiting the palate, little spicy, little pungent. So they loved it.
I never told anybody. I got a whole pile of envelope and letter with me. By 7 o'clock, I give it to my manager. I told him, when customer asks for the bill, you give this letter to them. He said, today is 8, and 88. It's the most luckier number in our Chinese around the world. Today, all the wine and dinner served to you on the house. The next day, Times of India, New York Times, I mean every newspaper and magazine carry out what China Garden has done. Everybody's face should be there. Free publicity.
Managing director at that time had told me, Hemant, we have a challenge. China Garden has opened, the crowd has moved there.
I have a restaurant, top plus the basement, which I have got 260 sitting capacity in those days. In spite of that, customer used to wait reservation 10 days, 15 days in advance. So the customer used to get mad and angry. You mean to say, when I want to eat, I have to think 15 days back? Well, that's the way it is.
Everybody's inspiration was Nelson Wong when he started China Garden 84. I mean, that was a big revolution, I would say, in a Chinese restaurant. He had a Korean menu, he had a Vietnamese menu, and you know, it was a happening place that time. I mean, anybody would come to Bombay, he has to visit China Garden.
It was that popular. You used to get fax from the Hyderabad, from New Delhi, from Bangalore, that please give me a table because we are passing by Bombay. It's like going to Agra, I have not seen Taj Mahal. And I coming to Bombay, I have not been to China Garden. In spite of reservation, customers used to come in and he said, my reservation is 8:30. Customer not getting up, what do I do? And those days used to cost me 1 bottle of black label whiskey every night. Sir, please have a drink on the house.
Then I went to China Garden and had a look at his menu, tasted his food. It was a mixture of everything. What we call today the Pan-Asian effect. It started with China Garden actually. I said no, we will correct ourselves. We will bring something new and different. I took a team of chefs. We went to Szechuan province. And mind it, there were very few people who used to speak English in those days in China. And from the board we had to make out, okay, order one of each. And whatever came, we had to eat. In Szechuan province, the chicken is a part of the chilies, heap of chilies. You have to find the chicken in the chilies. And you pick it and eat. And you will get the numbness first of the Szechuan peppercorn, then the smoky flavor of the chilies. And I said, from this we will go back and make the menus. First few menus were typical replica of the menus in Hong Kong. It was so spicy, but we toned down a little bit. Our country will not take that kind of a spiciness. So we had to tone down the spices level a little bit, but not the way the food is made. Only requests in the city was because 40% of the diners were vegetarian. So we had to create the alternate vegetarian food. Chef Morimoto said, I do not know how to cook vegetarian. I said, you make non-veg, I will create all the vegetarian. So whether it was the vegetable hot garlic, vegetable and mustard, I even created a Peking tofu. From the Peking duck to the Peking tofu, I had to create. I created the mapo tofu with the soya nuggets and the tofu. So those were the innovations which people loved it. Broccoli pepper salt, okra pepper salt, water chestnuts and mushrooms, the stuffed morels we did for the local palate. These were the innovations which we created. Vegetarian food has been a part of the Chinese cuisine by itself. Stir-fried kale, stir-fried pak choy was always an accompaniment, and it was a must for everybody.
Maybe about 20 years ago, I was traveling on the train back after a Chinese meal in the city. There were some beggars on the train and they asked for it, and I gave it to them. They opened and they started eating, and they said, oh, this is Chinese. And I thought that was really surprising that, right down at the bottom level, at really the lowest level of the Indian population, people could identify Chinese food.
Today in India, first preference is Indian, second remains Chinese. Third, all the other Japanese, Pan-Asian, Mexican, Italian, I call them by the way cuisines in one shot. That is the third choice.
Chinese restaurant is so popular today, it's the #1 food in the world because we can modify them to your local people palate. When you're cooking curry, you put curry paste, curry powder to make chicken curry or whatever curry. So instead of putting curry paste and curry powder, I put soya sauce. And then thicken it with the same corn flour and put it in the plate, the Manchurian chicken, and garnish with cilantro, coriander, to make Indian feel at home. Like dhania patta they call it. The higher consumption of dhania patta in the world is India. Everything they got dhania patta here. Our food is not authentic Chinese food. Being in Rome, you got to be Roman.
Mind it, sauce was Indian way. Chinese food didn't have many sauces. The dishes were not too much of sauce floating. But in India, we had to put little bit of the sauce because everybody wanted to eat something with the rice. They want the chicken or the prawns or what. They want the prawns with hot garlic sauce with a lot of sauce.
Suddenly everything is very busy and this man just banged the table and when he banged the table, all the sauce jumped up, That fellow shouting, call the manager. So I asked the fellow sitting there, my cashier who's sitting next to me, used to write the bills in hand. I said, what did he order? So he quickly took out his bill and said, vegetable fried rice, vegetable prawn soup and vegetable chow chow. I thought, shit, must be some meat in it, So I went up to him, I said, yes, can I help you? So he tells me that, is this vegetable fried rice? I said, yes. So I took the spoon and searching for the meat, prawn. I couldn't see anything. I said, yeah, I think so, it's vegetable fried. Are you sure? Again, I went second round, searching and all. I couldn't see anything. He's still looking at me, then I say, why, what's wrong with this? You know what he said to me? Where's the Kotmir and Pudina? He said, I said, yeah. I said, I can't believe. So I said, where did you have? Now, I don't blame that man,
Yeah.
He was a Gujarati gentleman.
Bombay, more likely than any other city, is where you saw the birth of Udupi Chinese. I have come across idli Manchurian, and the other is the spring roll dosa. So basically, it's the regular dosa with a filling, but wrapped up really tightly. So it resembles a spring roll and cut on the diagonal.
So now it's all fusion. Indian Chinese mix fusion हो गया है. इसमें मसाला ये वो डालो fusion हो गया. ऐसे पहला क्या अजीनोमोटो भी नहीं था. Only sugar. We put little bit of sugar to make it sweet or something. But now Ajinomoto dalta everywhere, even now the Indian restaurant and all, you go, the keema also they put. That's why you find it tasty and all.
If you want traditional styles of cooking, you have to go to homes, which are inaccessible to most people. And even then, even in homes, they don't have access to ingredients that they would have from the places that they came from. So all cuisines that are migrated are all adapted cuisines.
So many Marathi people, they started eating Chinese food at this place. So sometimes, there was a difficulty in expressing them, what is this, what is spring roll. So, we have to use typical that Marathi word, like we call it bakar vadi, bakar vadi of Chitale is bakar vadi famous. It is something like that, that was something very funny explanation my captain used to give when Mr. Bapat was there. But it was very convincing to the guest. And our menu is something, unique. I mean, you will find certain dishes you will not find anywhere else. Whether you call it Chinese food or, I do not know how to put it. Like an item like chicken meatball in crab meat sauce. Like we call it fish steak. There is no such steak as such in Chinese food, right? Usually steak is in a continental food. One basically item which is the most popular at this place, which is surprisingly, is roast pork chili. People were not very keen that I should have a pork on the menu at Shivai Park, but I kept it, and today it is super hit. People they are coming here to have pork belly. I doubt any restaurant is giving about 4 to 5 table sauces, which are, people they come, take it in a bottle, take it to America, London, wherever not. In fact, this is the only place, if you ask me, which doesn't have a Chinese chef, which doesn't have a Chinese owner, which doesn't have a Chinese name, which doesn't have a Chinese staff. But by the grace of God, we are on still 42 years, non-stop.
The earlier days of my training period, I would go and have a look at the Golden Dragon, but they won't teach anything those days. Maybe insecurity those days, or maybe it is they didn't want to share the dishes. All the Indian chefs were allowed only to do the cutting, chopping. Even the rice and the noodles were not prepared by the Indian chefs. I used to be the chef of an Indian restaurant called Tanjore, and I would tell them, you want chicken tikka? You want to try the tandoori chicken or a biryani? So I'll give you, but teach me your trade secrets. One dish in a week maybe, or one dish in 10 days. They will also take it slowly and tell me. And I started learning the marination, the cuts and everything.
The 6 chefs that had come in when we started in around 1973. So those 6 chefs who had come over here, they trained people. So over the decade, slowly, our team started producing the food exactly the way they used to do it.
One of the Chinese masters always used to say, you count in the wok, when you count from 10 to 1, and at the count of 1, the dishes should be prepared. It is 10 seconds. Indian cooking is a slow process. We should not braise the Chinese food. We should lightly stir fry it and give it. That's why from wok to the table, it was the theory.
And hence then slowly, we felt that we won't be requiring so many Chinese chefs over here. Well, initially when you start, you need people to help you. So we had lots of Chinese chefs. But once we mastered that art, slowly, we were also confident that we can do it.
You have this real Chinese people, but आजकल local सीख गया उधर और ज़्यादा नेपाली रखता है ताकि ऐसा लगे कि हाँ चाइनीज़ रेस्टोरेंट है, चाइनीज़ लोग है. ऐसे खाली क्या है, स्टूवर्ड लोग को चाइनीज़ को एम्प्लॉय करेगा, उसका शक्ल देखेगा. अभी क्या मणिपुरी रखता है, मणिपुरी लड़की रखता है, इंडियन वाला क्या समझेगा, वो वाला चाइनीज़ है.
One of the very senior Chinese premiers, he was staying in Taj on a state visit. The whole delegation came and they said, call the chef. We want to just applaud for him for a fantastic meal. And they started clapping, and they said, how the security, the chef is coming, Eagle chef is coming in their own ways. So the chef is coming, and they started clapping, and this. And suddenly they saw one Sardar gentleman coming as a chef of Golden Dragon. And they looked at the faces and they started clapping like this, slowly. And then later on they told, we never expected this.
जो अभी का जो जनरेशन उसको तो पता ही नहीं क्या खाना है वो लोगों को तो पता ही नहीं है। अभी सब लोग बड़ा आदमी लोग आता है, बहुत खाना खाता है, पार्टी होती है, तो बोलता है तुम अपना बेटा को क्यों बताता है, सिखाता नहीं तुम ये खाना तो मतलब अभी दिन हुआ भाई, दिन अब हराते ही है, मतलब ऐसा बना दो, एक ही है तुम अभी जो हमको मिलता है खाना खाने। अब मेरे बेटा लोग सीखता ही नहीं, अब हम क्या करेंगे, लेकिन उन लोगों को खाना अलग है, क्या करेगा। मेरा 2 बेटा एक कुक है, मैं तो बीबी को सिखाता है और क्या करेगा एक ही है, कर लेता है वो भी, बनाता आंटी। बॉम्बे जाने दिल नहीं करता, कपड़े बोल क्यों नहीं घूमता तुम इधर उधर, हम तो घूम लिया, जिस गली देखता हमको सन्नाटा लगता है। हाँ, वो दुकान नहीं, वो आदमी नहीं है, वो दोस्त नहीं है, अब पहला जैसा नहीं है ना, अभी सब बदली हो गया ना, तो हमको भी अच्छा नहीं लगता है। इतना दिन तक हम लोग साथ में काम किया था। जब मेरा दोस्त मेरे बाहर ले जाता खाने के लिए, बोला मेरे को ले जाओ चाइनीज रेस्टोरेंट मत ले जाओ, हम इंडियन खाना खाएगा। हम बोले क्यों, जब मैं खाता ना मेरा को मिस्टेक आ जाता है वहाँ पर, ये डालना भूल गया, ये आने भूल गया, अभी चाउमीन खाएगा तो ये ऐसा डालना चाहिए, ऐसा होना चाहिए, अभी तो सब मशीन में डाल देता सब, ये बात है अभी। तो हम जब भी बोलता है भाई चाइनीज रेस्टोरेंट नहीं जाएगा,